We'll also, during our council meeting, Councilmember O'Connor indicated he wishes to discuss the subject of library repairs. Well, he's not here tonight, but we can have that discussion anyways. Trying to think if there was anything. Was there anything else we wanted to go over in the work session?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about
What do you want to talk about?
fireworks ordinances.
Okay, fireworks ordinances. We've got an opening here. Fireworks ordinances. All right, let's start with the EDC. We have two esteemed gentlemen here from the EDC this evening, Mr. Perry Shea and Mr. Aslan Mead, who would like to come to the lectern and take it from here.
Is this because you're all dressed up in a suit?
Yeah, I have to be official. You guys don't have anything to say? We're gonna just be sitting here staring at each other for an hour.
So I actually have to turn something on?
Yes, sir. The button should be green. There's a button that says push.
Okay.
Don't
It's
push
green
it.
right now.
Is it green?
Yeah.
You have to pull the button that says push.
Oh, God. Just push the button now, so.
It's already green? Okay,
There
now
we
it's
go.
greener.
Yeah.
Green-er.
Right, look, it's Rick Nelson.
There he is.
And I'd like to conclude by saying that. Alright, now that you're gonna take over for me?
No.
Alright,
How you doing?
so I really just came, well, I'll give a couple updates or whatever and answer questions or whatever, but I mostly came to talk about this green ribbon panel that we're setting up for the park. So, and John will, he's over there somewhere, will join in, and Terry will join in, and Rick will join in, and anyone else. So, just a couple of things that we are, it feels like we feel like, you know, the project moves forward, and then the project gets stopped up, and then the project moves forward, and then the project, and so I feel like we are in a good unstuck phase right now. We just did the gopher review out there last 2 weeks ago or something. There's no gophers, which is awesome,
Which
right?
is amazing.
We've been really stuck up on this Commerce contract where we asked Commerce that could we switch it over to the city of Tenino to do the infrastructure extension, the sewer and water, for that first $600,000. And they said that shouldn't be a problem, but it has to be approved by the legislature. And then 3.5 months later, I finally made use of Ruth at Senator Braun's office, and we got that done this week. So now we can move forward and actually start the contract with Commerce and actually have the infrastructure happen this summer, which will be really exciting. We can go out with some golden shovels and get some photo ops of you all out there with your hard hats on and digging the water.
I don't want to mess up my hair with a hard
I
hat.
have them.
Okay. Alright, so those are really good. So I want to get into the green ribbon panel. John, do you have, is there some kind of scope of work with Gibbs and Olson's on the approval tonight or anything like that? Are you doing anything like that?
Yeah, but it's related to this building's renovation, not this project.
Okay, so there's not anything you're,
Correct.
okay. So I know John just told me that he included the presentation I did to the EDC Board of Directors earlier in the month. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that, but I'm willing to answer questions, but that was just an update. Looked like it's okay. So,
I thought we were going to give it tonight.
yeah, I didn't know that.
Okay.
But,
Sorry.
I mean, we can, if you want, we can go through it really quick, but,
We have time.
okay. So, am I doing that?
You're the one that gave it.
No, I mean, am I doing the technology piece? Well, I mean, is it
That's
just,
why I was
okay.
trying to get you come up
Let
there.
everybody know what they're doing.
Stand
Right.
up with this piece of junk.
There's a lot of good communication going on.
No. So you understand that the presentation is so large, we have to drive it around with Adobe Acrobat, and Adobe Acrobat doesn't like this system. So you can't just push, you just scroll.
down.
Yeah,
Oh,
There you go.
it's too easy.
yeah. Well, anyways, I mean, yeah, there's not a lot to it. So anyways, this was the latest rendering done by SCJ Alliance of what the building could potentially look like. This would be looking like on the property, looking out. That would be the main road behind it, and the Alpacas of America behind it. And so, you know, depending on the kinds of tenants that we ended up, if we ended up with a distillery, cidery kind of people, then there could be outdoor seating and there could be the tasting room component. If it was a full-on just processor that's in there, like a Ole Crowder, we've been working with senior services, or South Sound, or things of that nature, then obviously it doesn't necessarily need the outdoor seating, but, you know, the end goal is to create some kinds of gathering spaces and some kind of frontage on the main road that makes it attractive and some kind of agritourism destination. But we are focusing on one building right now, which is what we got the funds for so far. And it really is going to depend on who ends up being the first tenant or tenants in that building. We did have, we did just do a design charrette. Again, SCJ was involved. We had a local architectural firm, artisan group volunteer their time. We got together with the most likely tenants that we've been talking to, and we did 2 sessions, one with the craft beverage people in the morning and one with the food processors in the afternoon, and we just looked at what their needs are for a building and could we design the first building that we actually got the funding for the needs of the most likely tenants, and were there synergies amongst them. You know, could there be multiple tenants who could all use the same cold storage facility, things of that nature. And so I think that was a really rewarding exercise, and we learned a lot at that time. We also really dialed in a little bit more on really, if we got 1.5 million, how much of a building can we really get for that? And then, you know, if we're going to actually include any of the kind of tenant improvements in that building, then we're probably not going to have a full 10,000 square foot building. If we want some kind of facade or something that makes it look nicer than just one giant rectangle of corrugated metal, then, you know, it's like what can we really get for the money that we have, and then who are the most likely tenants, and how they could interact with each other. So it was a valuable exercise, but at this point we're still that chicken and the egg where no tenant has actually committed to being that first tenant. If we could actually promise a date when the park would be open and that building would be up and running, then we could probably get a tenant. So it's a little bit, you know, we work on both sides of that. So any questions on that moving forward? All right. So what's next? Summer 2019. So this is what we're mostly here to talk about today. The governance structure is the main reason we were calling this. We're calling it a green ribbon panel now. Since this presentation, we changed the color of the ribbon, and we reached out to a bunch of key partners and stakeholders in the agricultural community and asked them to be on this. We've had an overwhelmingly positive response. Pretty much everyone that we extended any kind of invitation to has said yes. So we will talk about that a little bit more, but let me come back to that. We will have the master plan done this summer, and so it's probably going to be by the end of the summer. Right now we're scheduled to present that to the Port of Olympia, who funded the majority of that, on August 26th. We can certainly come back to the city of Tenino, would be the obvious place to also present that and give you the master plan update. Is there anything more you want to say on that, Perry?
No, that's good.
Okay, so the plan will be done, and we're going to break ground, and like I said a minute ago, we really moved that forward just yesterday, and then we start working on it today. But some of the stuff we had already done, and we'll see how much of it we can already use, like the tribal notifications and things like that for disturbing ground. We do plan to send in a grant to TransAlta. I did just meet with David Watterson. We're looking at ways that we could combine the 2 projects, the energy project and the ag project, with both getting significant funding, and like they're both in this tiny little town of Tenino. Like, are there ways that we can work together? Dave's going to look into some ways that maybe that he could find some extra money for that first building to have more energy efficiency components and things of that nature. Seeing the TransAlta grant made me think of Dave, because I know they're also preparing a TransAlta grant, but we've also heard from them that they're not even looking at grants until the end of the year, so it doesn't seem to be a real rush on things. Just to point this piece out, I don't know if we've talked about this, but if you can see this better as a presentation, you know, we've had 30 organizations throughout Grays Harbor, Lewis, and Thurston County sign on to a regional letter of collaboration among agricultural partners. Someday we'll get the Thurston Farm Bureau involved, but we have both the Lewis County and the Grays Harbor Farm Bureau But, yes, I hear I don't have a big fan over there that talks bad about me at times, but we'll work on that.
Talk bad about you.
All right, not you. You would never say anything bad about me, Rick.
I've heard him. I've heard him.
Yeah. But anyways, this is very exciting. There will be a meeting with this group in August as well, getting those folks together. And the idea really behind that is, you know, if there's multiple projects going on, that we're all collaborating, we're not competing with each other. So, you know, Tumwater's doing this craft district, which is really inspiring. We're working with the Port of Chehalis now, that's looking at a grain storage facility, and the idea is actually that the Lewis County grain growers could grow grain, store it at the Port of Chehalis, and then that grain could actually go up to the craft district in Tumwater, and we're actually looking at creating a grain receiving silo there. And then that, you know, could be there for not only what's going on up in Tumwater, like the craft brewing and distilling program with South Puget Sound Community College and the different distilleries and whatnot, but that our local brewers could come over there and get that, but malted barley and whatnot to make local varieties of beer, which is happening this year. And since I'm rambling all over the place and my boss isn't here to stop me, just Perry, which is his boss, but
I usually give him a 5-minute warning.
yeah, because Aslan will talk. So I do suggest if you can come to the Tumwater
Artesian Brew Fest.
right, the Brew Fest, Tumwater Brew Fest is August 17th. And that will have local beer made from local grains for the first time in like 125 years in Thurston County. So there'll be 5 different breweries with local beer there. So moving onward. See, I just came to talk about the Brew Ribbon panel. This is really an exciting piece for me, something I've been working on for a long time, but with great new partners in the region. We put in for a grant for the distribution side of things and market development. So while the ag park is really focused on processing of food, and the idea that we could source more local food and help drive local production of food if we can process more of it here, we're also looking at developing out the distribution in the markets. And so we're working with Providence St. Peter Hospital and Centralia Hospital down in Centralia. They have made a commitment to purchase more local food. We're working with a local distributor, just a small scale local distributor, to take food from farms to the hospitals right now. And then we do have the Northwest Agricultural Business Center, which is a key partner, just got funding to have their staff people service our area. And they have been running the Puget Sound Food Hub up north, which is already a distribution system that takes food from local growers and local processors to local purchasers. So that's really an exciting piece, and that would be a huge boon to our local economy and our local food economy if we could have the buyers committing to buying more local. So like those large institutions like hospitals, school districts, universities, things of that nature. So these are the deliverables that we are promising to the EDC board and to the Tenino Council, that we will get this governance panel set up. We'll complete the master plan. We're going to break ground, and hopefully we will at least submit a grant to TransAlta. All right. Any questions there? I guess that's the next piece.
John had mentioned at the Economic Development Practitioners meeting, there was another source of funds that was brought. What was that you were?
The Economic Development Reserve Fund, but that's would not be an appropriate use of that.
For the pad?
Right.
Okay.
Aslan, I just.
Yeah, please.
If I have to walk up there.
If you want it to be recorded.
All right. I just want to say that you gotta. I know we need to get into the main part, which is the the green ribbon. We just changed the color. Green is very sustainable, you know. Green energy, green everything. We can understate the importance of still being energized on this, because we don't have all the funding we need. So even though we got the money to build the water and the sewer, mainly the water extension, the infrastructure, and then also the money, the 1.5 million for the first building, we still need some money to actually do pad development, site development work to support that. So we still have a lot of work ahead of us, and we still need to, you know, be really charging ahead on this, and all our partners to support finding other ways to get the money, so that when we come around this time next year, we actually would like to break ground in the spring, so we could open that first building in the fall or earlier of 2020. To do that, we need some more money, so we continually have to work hard on this. We have so much momentum, I think we can, I'm confident we can get it, but we're not there yet. I just wanted to make sure the council understood that, when we get the water out there, that's a huge thing, but we really can't break ground on the building pad until we get, the building, until we get the additional money for that. So we're really exhausting all our resources right now, working really hard. 3 years ago, we didn't have any money, and we're sitting, making a presentation to TransAlta, and which really frustrated me because we met every obligation that they told us to do. They said, go away, come back, in a nice way, find money, state and federal money, come back, and we will entertain this. So we have. So I feel like we have a compelling case. We've done our work. The mayor's led the charge on this with ASL and the EDC. We've got the funding from the state legislature. We got so many partners on this, you guys. I just feel really, I think this is really exciting for this community. So let's stay in it. Let's be excited about it, because our job isn't done until we get the rest of the money to build that first building, and then we can be happy. All right. So I just wanted to say that, because we have a lot of work ahead of us between now and this year.
I feel like this panel that we're about to hear about is gonna be a next phase to help bring in energy and funds. And when we get a bunch of key players at the table, that's the main ingredient right there.
Yeah, so we walk through the next couple of slides and talk about the composition of this panel and what their work scope is supposed to be, are going to be doing over the next 2 or 3 months. It's really significant to set that next stage of organization, management, who's, basically the ambassadors of this project, the cheerleaders of such. And so I think it's really important, and there's a lot of work to do over the next 2 months as we do that, so we can come back to you and say, here's how we think we're going to moving forward, this is how the park would be managed, this is what it means to the city. So it's a wonderful opportunity, and we've got a lot of great people that have already signed up for it on their own time. And so I think there's a lot of enthusiasm behind this. So just hang with us and be there in support, because I think it's all going to come to fruition.
Thank you, Barry. John, anything else to add at this stage?
Well, it's a work session, so we're, brainstorming as much as we're doing anything else I would need. Here's what I was thinking, and there's some brain power in the room. We need to bridge the gap between the building and the site development and foundation. So, I'm not completely clear on how we can use the Economic Development Reserve Fund, but if there's a way we could leverage some piece of that, that would be good. The city could apply to the Community Economic Revitalization Board, and there's 2 pots of money in there. The first pot of money is for plans that lead to the development of other plans, and that's free money to the city. So we could apply for that, and if we get it, then we go in for the other pot of money to actually do so the plan, the free money is to say, our plan is going to be to place this building at this location, and all the engineering stuff that goes in with that. And then the plan to design the building and pour the foundation and all that, that's a very low interest rate loan to the city, that we could do that. And where it would get problematic is site control, but I think if we keep the end state in mind, site control would go away as an issue. And then the other thing we could do is it's economic development, and so the city can loan itself from its proprietary funds to do general fund stuff.
Come on in.
Oh, come on in.
I'm here for the meeting, I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem. We kept kind of walking around over there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But it's the same thing. Rather than go out for a CDRB loan, the city can loan it to ourselves. We're not going to say no to ourselves. But again, keeping the end state in mind, there's little hurdles in there that we'll have to overcome. But I'm just trying to think of the big sources of money out
And one thing to make note of right now is that the city, besides, John's staff time, the city is not on the hook for any money so far. We've just raised money, free grant money basically, or, it's mostly through the capital budget, but through the port and USDA. So if you go after a loan, then this project, that's when you really have skin in the game and you have to be able to get a return on that investment. So both John and I'm guessing, will be sitting in on this blue ribbon panel as staff. And one of the things you all have to decide is who is your representative on that panel. But that is definitely part of the discussion, and so why don't I just transition into that. So this was a matrix that Perry and Michael Cade, my boss, came up with, and you have it in your packets, which you're going to see better than on this screen. But the idea was, if it was the EDC who owned and operated the park, what are the pros and cons of that? If it was the city of Tenino that owned and operated the park, what would be the pros and cons? If it was the port who owned it, if it was a nonprofit entity that was created specifically for this, if it was a for-profit entity, which could even be like an existing company, like a Kaufman or somebody who already manages industrial parks, and so they would just, end up managing this park or things of that nature. And so the first task for this panel is to delve into these issues and try to figure out what is the best owner and operator likely to be moving forward with the park. And the panel may have other tasks as we move along, but that is really the piece that we really want to get started working on this summer, is really, who should be that owner and operating piece. Perry, anything?
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Good, I gotta look to this.
We should.
This is a pretty significant decision, and it's not that, the decision made going forward this fall about how we move forward in the next couple of years is really what we're talking about. And then as the park gets more mature and developed out, you can revisit this and say, okay, now who should operate and maintain this? So it's really significant right now to get the best operating entity on the ground, because not only is it managing the park, it's also doing marketing, branding, tenant recruitment, funding, sources that John was talking about. How do we actually get to more of the finish line where we have critical mass on the park that is sustainable? Because the city owns the land, so anything that goes out there, you actually, you are then leasing the land to future tenants that are in buildings. And so that also can be a positive financial opportunity for the city. So it's really critical as it goes forward that we understand the risks and the financial liability associated with how the park is managed and operated, because there will be costs, and at what time does that transfer over to some entity that would then take it on and help build this. And it's really important in the first 5 years is to get somebody really, a company really that understands the market and can actually help build it out. And then we can always revisit it, but that's a key task of this panel, is to really sort through that and to understand, and then we come back and actually make a recommendation to the council that, what the panel is recommending, how we move forward.
So questions or comments, right, at this stage on this piece? Alright, so I'm gonna just let you know who has said yes, that we reached out to. We brainstormed, John and Wayne brainstormed with me, and EDC folks brainstormed with me, and we sent this out to a whole bunch of people, and most everybody has responded yes. So we have a very large panel at this point, and that's something we need to talk about. But I do also, for your sake, if there's someone glaringly missing that we don't have on it, we would like you to just definitely speak up there. We have reached out to a wide variety of producers, actual agricultural stakeholders. We haven't heard a great response yet from them. Only about 3 or 4 have responded, including potentially the Nelson family. Sounds like someone from the family will be.
Looks like it, yeah.
Okay, which is great. What's that? We also reached out to Kevin Jensen here locally. What were you saying?
It's excellent.
All right, excellent. So why don't I just give you a quick rundown? We have Maureen Harcum, who is the immediate past president of the Lewis County Farm Bureau, Bob Moorbacher, the president of Centralia College, J.T. Wilcox, our Washington State legislator, Stephen Bramwell, our WSU Extension Director, Randy Mueller, the director of the Port of Chehalis, Mike Peroni from the Northwest Agricultural Business Center, Sarah Moorhead from the Thurston Conservation District, Dave Fenn, both representing a producer in Lewis County as well as the chair of the Lewis Conservation District, someone from the Nelson family, Sam Givney, the director of the Port of Olympia, Josh Cummings, the Economic Development Director for the county, Derek Sanderson, the Director of Washington State Department of Agriculture, and then my boss put together, we needed someone from marketing, which is a gentleman named Stephen Daniels Brown, construction, which is Jace Munson from former construction and an EDC board member, someone from finance, which is Carrie Whistler, the president of the EDC board of directors from Ole Fed, engineering, which is Perry from SCJ, civic, which is a gentleman named Kevin Eckhart, who has been with Heritage Bank, regional planning, which is the Mark Daly, the director of Thurston Regional Planning. We've asked Will Rutherford from your planning commission, and you're saying he has said yes? Okay, he didn't say yes to me. And then obviously someone from the city of Tenino. So I don't know if that's something you want to discuss at all during this work session of who should be your representative. I know you're missing a couple people, but that is, as of now, we have 20 people who have said yes. I'm counting Tenino in that, although, right now it's been Wayne I've been working with, so. Any discussion on that piece?
That's a great group.
It is an amazing group, and I'm really happy to see some heavy hitters from Lewis County. I mean, it's not just a Thurston deal, so.
Well, I'm really happy to see the enthusiasm of the number of people that want to be here.
Yes, yeah, it's amazing, and when JT Wilcox said yes, right, I mean, he was the first person to say yes, and
he
that
didn't
was
hesitate, huh?
yeah, that was like, that is fantastic. So, and then when I shared that with like WSDA and Commerce, they were like, well, maybe it shouldn't be little me, Stephen Dunn from Commerce, maybe it should be my boss, and so now, they're sending like the directors from the organizations, so.
Yeah, that's huge.
What's that?
Berkeley?
So I don't know if that's gonna happen with Commerce, but Stephen said, well, I'm gonna pass it on and see what happens. But it is, the director of WSDA is going to be on the panel, so. And then, presidents of colleges and port directors and,
That's great.
so. All right, so we would like to try to cut this off, although if there's somebody who is just too good to pass up, but like John and I were talking today, like how we were planning on holding that first meeting, at the Quarry House, and it's like,
We're in the Coliseum.
yeah, yeah, and then it's hard to manage a group of a large group of people, but anyways, so that's where we're at right now with 20 people having said yes. Okay, the other piece, and I'm gonna look to John on how far we get into this right now, but your city attorney Rick Hughes has had some questions. We had created a really draft contract to set up this panel and the whole idea of a governance advisory board, and we had sent that out as a draft, and John looked at it and he sent it to the city attorney. I think it's in your packet, and there is some questions, specifically the big one being right now it's set up to be an EDC deal where this panel would report back to the EDC, and the EDC, any recommendations they made, the EDC board of directors would have to say about accepting those recommendations or not. And Rick and John have said, well, what about the city of Tenino? And so that is a major question, and Perry's willing to weigh in on that, as well as obviously you all. And then one of the other pieces was, should it include the Port of Olympia? Should they also be part of this? Do we actually need a contract? Well, we need something that lays out what the authority of this panel is, what we're expecting from this panel, what they can and cannot do. So, John, you wanna?
Well, when you analyze it in that regard, I think I agree with you. We're pulling together a green ribbon panel, because we like green more than blue.
I think
I never wanted a green ribbon when I was young.
And so the question of who gets to approve their recommendations, that's really the nexus of the issue. Who gets to approve those recommendations? The three organizations you all mentioned, we've got significant skin in the game. The Tenino's got the land, the EDC's done all the work up through here, and the port coughed up 75 grand. So, it's fair that they have a say in it. Those are just my thoughts. It's not my decision, obviously. And those were Rick's three big concerns is, in the end, what's the money look like? He's simply trying to keep his fiduciary responsibilities to the city primary in his mind. I don't share his financial concerns. I think the city will be well taken care of exactly the way we talked about this thing coming about. The control issue, you know, who's gonna run it and all that kind of stuff, I agree with Perry. I mean, I think we've kicked the can down the road as far as we can kick it. We gotta make a decision, and it's the green ribbon panel. But again, who's that panel reporting to?
Any?
Good discussion.
Alright.
I'm not gonna answer, I don't, I'm soaking it in, just like everybody
Okay.
else.
Because originally we wanted to like officially launch the panel tonight, and like, you know, in our minds we were gonna sign this contract and say that it is launched. There's a proclamation from your council or whatever, and John and Rick were like, well, we're not there yet, you know, and so we need to discuss it, and then maybe next council meeting we officially launch it. It's launched. We've already invited people. They've already said yes. We've had the first date or the first meeting set up, which is August 5th. It'll be at the Quarry House. I mean, it's moving forward, but as far as if we do feel there needs to be some kind of contract, some kind of legal, semi-legal document that lays out what this panel can and cannot do, are you?
Well, I think what we have going on right now with the EDC's clearly in the lead in that regard, and I don't think we're.
That's been the case since
Right.
day one. And,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
we're-
not our
We're
issue.
joined at the hip.
Yeah.
But the lifting and the work has
Right.
not been done
Right.
it's been done by the EDC, and that's working. What
I
we're doing
would-
is working.
Absolutely, I would say that as we get this group organized, and I call it also developing a charter around this group. How do we work together? What are the obligations, responsibilities? What are the outcomes? And we're gonna know a lot more after we get through the first couple of meetings with this group. But I really believe, since we know in the first couple of years, the EDC is still gonna be in a strong position, because we actually have the lease with the city of the land to help build this whole thing. And so we need to stay in that capacity right now as we launch this, and then who's the best entity to take over, you know, as the property and the project starts to build out. So I think there's plenty of opportunities between where we get to that point to revisit this. I think right now, we have this power group, this green ribbon panel. It's gonna be very collaborative. You know, we're gonna look at all these alternatives and options. I think whatever comes out of that
I want the new
group,
port director
as a
to come down and be
recommendation.
part of this discussion. I'm excited
Sure.
about that.
Yeah, Sam's really excited about this project, and being engaged in this panel will be significant. So I think coming out of the panel, this green ribbon panel, is going to be a recommendation that's going to be well vetted. Why wouldn't the EDC accept that, you know, as part of that? I think what we want to do with this panel is that as we come to a conclusion, it's the expectation that that gets endorsed.
Yeah.
Not that we have to worry about trying to go to 3 different entities, you know, our agencies as such, to get a formal approval. I think that's part of the mission of this panel of experts, is that let them do the work, they're the experts at it. Let's come back, then we'll have a recommendation, we say, as an endorsement, we're moving forward on this premise based on all the hard work that was done over the last 3 or 4 months with this group of experts. So that's what I would say, you know, that we don't need to worry too much about that issue, because I think it's all going to come out with the work that the panel does, and that's the expectation of them to do that.
So since this is a work session, what, you know, are we gonna try to have something that we bring back by a next council meeting? Is this something we need to talk more to Rick Hughes about? Do you have an opinion, Barry?
Well, no, that's
You know,
like-
Rick is gonna watch this video, and I
Yeah.
think he will probably have a lot of, any questions he has will be answered through watching the video.
So here's how we saw, let's back up and address your first concern first. I think by the authority of everything we've done so far, we can pull the green ribbon panel together. I mean, there's absolutely no reason to delay that at all. And then like the mayor said, so, I'm always uncomfortable speaking for somebody else, but as I understand Rick's concerns, you know, his job is to advise this body. And he feels like he's not in a position to advise this body with respect to signing the agreement we were asked to sign. So if you're withdrawing the agreement, that problem goes away. If the agreement comes back, the issues will come back. You know, who's the right people to to have the agreement, you know, who's the council gonna report to, or the panel, I should say?
I would suggest that we get our panel launched, get them working. Then we, at the same time, we can work with John and Rick and the mayor through any of the issues that may still be there with that agreement. I think we have time for that, but let's get started, let's get started with the panel. Let's get them, get that work initiated, and then we have time to work through these items.
And we, in my conversations with Rick, he's gonna watch the video, he's gonna see our minutes, and then he's gonna come to the 23 July meeting of the council, give his advice to our council, and that's it. Whatever the council then decides on behalf of the city of Tenino, that's.
If the panel has some type of recommendation.
Yeah, and if they don't, that's what I'm sorry, I should have been more clear about that. So the panel's working in the background. What we're doing by having our city attorney review this, give his advice to council, is prepping for when the panel is ready to make those recommendations. So it's a parallel process, and we do have plenty of time. Yeah.
Alright, so there's no specific action item that has to happen. We have
Let's get the thinking together.
Panel set for August 5th, and we get started.
Awesome.
Okay?
Right? We're ready to go.
Let's do this.
Alright. So,
Before we leave, should we?
I mean, we're not ready to leave tonight, we're ready to get started.
Well, if we get to that, I also want to talk about the budget stuff that we talked about, and I also want to talk about TCOM, the ILA, which I think is actually kind of pressing. So, are you guys good?
yep,
Okay.
alright.
So,
Thank you, everybody.
so TCOM came and gave a presentation at the last meeting, right? And I was not here, but they were needing a renewed ILA or IGA, I don't remember what they were calling it, for them to go forward with a ballot initiative to get funds to revamp the entire county's dispatch system. It was relayed to them that, and I think it was absolutely appropriate to relay to them again, as we have before, that we feel like South County is not adequately represented on their board, on their advisory board, or on their governing board. We said that to them last time we came down here. That the director, Keith Llewellyn, he got a little anxious about that, and he is now worried that we are not going to sign on to that ILA or that IGA, and that does curtail their efforts to put a ballot initiative forward. And that's not right either. I had a good discussion with him today. I'm sorry, I got some sinus issues here. I had a good discussion with him today, and I said that we are on board with dispatch's needs and TCOM's needs, and we want to support that. However, we hadn't heard anything from TCOM for 2 years, and then they came down and they said, "Hey, we need millions of dollars." And that's just offensive. And I said, we know that there is a South County representative, but we have no interactions with them. And I said, we are not specifically saying Tenino needs a seat on the board, but I think it is well past time for there to be a second South County representative. And he is in agreement with that, and he says now is the right time to start talking about that, because if this initiative does pass, they have to do another IGA after that. And that would be the appropriate time to say, hey, there needs to be another South County representative. So he is asking that we sign on to that ILA, and it needs to be to them by July 23rd, so that they can get the paperwork into the county to get on the ballot, which is our next meeting. So I don't know if that, and then I didn't have the discussion with him until like late in the evening today. So I don't know if that means we need to take action on that tonight, but I'm assuming we do. Everybody saw it last meeting. The attorney has reviewed it or has not reviewed it. It's a well-vetted document.
It's a well-vetted document. There's no reason, there's no legal contractual reason not to sign it.
Okay.
And he did say that if we want a seat on the panel, that we need to go to the board.
What he has asked,
That's exactly right.
what he has asked is that he has asked that we sign on to the TCOM ILA, And he has asked that we also send a letter to the board saying that we feel South County doesn't have adequate representation on their board, and we would like them to consider adding a second South County position. So, and he agrees. He thinks it is past time to do something like that, because the way it sits now, the only people that advise that body is, Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, and the Sheriff's Department. And Young.
And they're supposed to be representing us.
Yes. So, I wanna know if the council is comfortable with putting that on the agenda and taking some action on that tonight.
I am.
John, do you have the language to add, or
We can make it up.
we can make it
Yeah,
up?
we'll just add it to the agenda and,
It was on the last.
if we're talking about what would the motion be to authorize Mayor Fournier to enter the ILA between us and CityCouncil 911.
Okay. Okay, so when that comes up, I would like somebody to consider doing that, and we can discuss it further if anybody's gotten concerns. I was not here for the discussion, so I would welcome, everybody to bring up what was brought up last time. If there are any reasons to hesitate, let's get them on the table and let's talk about it. Budget discussion, so the call for budgets went out to the department heads, and we also had a department head meeting. There's something that we should start talking about, and that's the chief has brought up the possibility of working with the school to fully fund an SRO position. So I want us to kind of flesh that out over the next couple months of what that would mean, and what that would mean for the budget, how we would make that happen. Right now, they fund 20% of an officer. So if we were, right, is that about it?
Yeah, about that.
So the school funds 20% of an officer. If they, what would we need from them to fully fund an SRO position? What would that look like? For us, that would need to look like somebody that is able to be in the school during the days, that wouldn't be somebody that is on patrol. So that would give us 2 people during the days. And, if an emergency happens, of course, the person can leave the school, but this person would be tied to the school during the school hours. They would be developing curriculum, they would be training teachers, they would be more of a service provider than just a response person in the schools. We would want to take it further than like security and safety to actually, working with the kids. And I know that that's something you guys do now, but we would want to program it. So figuring out how and what that would look like. We also, we have currently budgeted a maintenance helper position. We went out to take applications for that. We did not get a great response for that position. And we feel that it wasn't like an adequate job to really bring in the number of applicants and the type of applicant that the Public Works Department is really wanting. So they kind of came back and they said, well, can we make it a maintenance worker position, which would be a big boost in pay, and it would it's more of like a family wage job than an entry-level job. We kicked that around, and then we came up with the idea of maybe instead of adding a maintenance worker position, let's develop perhaps a recreation coordinator position, somebody that would be like a Parks and Rec person that would do the maintenance worker jobs, and would still be this position now is their primary responsibility is park maintenance. So we want to explore the idea of having kind of a hybrid position where this person would not only be responsible for maintaining the parks as a part of the Public Works team, but also coordinating recreation opportunities, bringing in Little League and softball teams to play on our fields, finding things and coordinating with Oregon Trail Days, all the other festivals that go on, and putting out opportunities where the city would also maybe make a little revenue to recoup the cost of this position. So that is being discussed, and that will be on future work session topics, and Troy will lead the discussion on that, and the chief will lead the discussion on the other one.
Going back to the resource officer in the schools. Isn't it, if we, let's say we passed a increase in sales tax, doesn't that money have to be used for this, for safety reasons? Doesn't that have to be used for something like that?
If we're wanting to go for a sales tax increase to fund public safety, then yes. But we haven't talked about that. We had talked about a sales tax increase for transportation. I don't know if we'd wanna do both things. Did you stood up?
I stood up just in case you needed me to
Okay,
interject something.
okay. Alright, that's all I've got. You wanted to talk about fireworks ordinances.
I would like to go over our fireworks ordinances. I'll tell you, people were, I don't know if they were using illegal fireworks or if they were just putting large fireworks that they bought legally in cans to make them sound like, but if I had just gotten back from some war zone somewhere and was in my, I'm telling you, it was horrible. I thought we were in a war around my house. I really did. It was just horrible. I feel bad for the soldiers that have come back and the PTSD. I feel sorry for animals. I mean, it was just scary. It's kind of like when the mayor hits the gavel really hard.
So at our next meeting, Councilmember Godevak would like us to include in the work session a review of fireworks ordinances. Thank you. All right, we have about 10 minutes left. Clerk Treasurer Millard, did you want to go over, or do we want to do maybe we can do the presentation for PRPC? How long do you think you guys?
20 minutes plus your time for questions.
Okay, let's leave it where it's at then. Did you want to go over the meeting with?
Sure.
Okay.
So we've talked about septic receiving for almost 4 years now. And I viewed the video of the meeting that I missed, the 11 June meeting, where Mr. Nguyen presented his septic receiving plan to you guys, and you accepted his plan and you accepted his proposed budget. And the city is in position to execute. We don't want to spend, I mean, you know, we don't want to spend that whole amount at once. So we asked him to come back down and sit down with us today and kind of refine that plan so that we know, you know, in what sequence we need to do things. And the upshot of it was, we got our SCJ planner really excited about it because he started to see the possibilities of the septic receiving and composting, how it fits so well with what we're trying to do at the ag park and the local economy. So they really started bringing more into the picture, and it started us thinking, wow, you know, there's other places where we can get the money to do this, because if you start doing high-tech kind of experimental things, as Councilmember Watterson well knows, the money tends to follow that. And so we started discussing, when you do this composting operation, it generates a lot of heat. What if, since we're in the infrastructure development mode, what if we take that heat and transfer it to these buildings that we're going to build, you know, using recycled water from our plant. So, you know, the water comes out of the plant, it flows through and cools the composting process, and then goes into the buildings to heat the buildings, and then comes back and goes right back to the plant. You know, whatever else, whatever other use we want to make of it, we can. So that generated a lot of discussion. And probably the bottom line thing to take away is, Mr. Cannon may speak about it, but we agreed that we're going to start flattening that mound of dirt behind the collection ponds out there and get ready to get a dewatering device. Because, you know, it's the chicken or the egg. in order to do septic receiving, we gotta make more room in our lagoons. In order to make more room in the lagoons, we gotta get what's in there out. In order to get what's in there out, we have to do the dewatering anyway. So, you know, where do we wanna enter that matrix? Troy and I think the right place is by flattening the land first, and then incrementally do enough to get it so that we can de-water the current contents of the holding ponds, clear that out, you know, always within the guidelines that we have to operate in, within the constraints of our permits. Get that stuff out of there, reduce the volume, start doing septic receiving, and start that revenue stream flowing. And once that revenue stream is flowing, that's where the rest of the money that you all have appropriated for the project will come from. So, I mean, we just started that today. I'm just explaining it to you in real gross terms, but you know, Troy's as anxious to get behind the bulldozer as I am as anxious that he get behind the bulldozer.
Okay.
Questions?
Just to add on, I had contacted Department of Commerce, has done a lot of work with composting and biodigesters, and I'm actually just gonna go talk to him next week hopefully, so may get some more information or some more ideas of things we can do, so I'll bring those back if I hear any, if he has any other ideas that may work along the same lines. There's some money out there for doing some of this kind of stuff, so if we can find a good way to do it, maybe we can get some money from Commerce, maybe.
Other people's money is always the best.
Well, it's kind of hard.
So it was hard to begin with.
Kind of just send it over here and they send it back.
Excellent. All right, that leaves us with 8 minutes. Is there anything anybody else has for the work session? John?
You got your gloves dirty yet, Mayor?
Have I got my gloves dirty?
Yeah, if you're gonna work, you should at least get your gloves dirty.
All right, we'll take an 8-minute recess.
So it's one person really three.
Melissa said we saw it because it was sick. So stand back here and you can do that.
Yeah, that's right. No,
Your mom wanted it like
it's all right.
Just say that, good.
We did it just,
What's going on? Yeah.
I've only been going 2.5. I don't know how. Yeah.
Did you?
Saw a couple kids on there.
Yeah. Yeah. They're playing some quarterbacks. Yeah, trained him well. Yeah. He said that. You guys are done with this one. I said, first of all, you don't let them eat out. What do you think's gonna happen? Someone's gonna call. Yep.
Wow.
Oh, was it? Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. They all. They all. Well, I know for sure he doesn't, because he was. No, yeah, that's fine. I knew he has, but he's on a.
I have children in Warren. Yes, so they're gonna be.
Couldn't get the job. It was probably so I was a little bit. So,
Oh, wow.
Keeps him in check. Oh, yeah. Really?
yeah.
Right on.
But that thing knows.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty good. I
I
mean,
haven't seen you in a month of Mondays.
well, Tuesdays if you don't do it together, done family stuff. So I can go, well, we switched.
yeah, exactly. I mean, at least there was some somewhere. I don't know if anyone left.
Yeah. Quit doing speaking of my favorite, so I can't say this live. City council highlight.
Right, you gotta go, so you're a week behind. Oh, we
Pretty
can
much,
yeah.
pretty much. Thank you for
I had
that.
a call in my house. I was went right down there. Pulled him right up ahead of me.
I went over to the parking lot.
Alright.
So I was just kinda like.
I thought that would be, just in case you confused about which one.
Doesn't get things out.
Still on that.
They have this, and they,
You were
So obviously,
because they didn't want any other bank to own the property.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Well,
Right, you can volunteer, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All's hell that is.
yeah, that's all you
well, that's the
know.
whole thing. So they're trying to clear their books of the whole damn thing.
Yeah. It's just like, when I went up there,
you guys don't have it on the office, right?
yeah. This year or 10 years from now?
No, 3 years.
Oh, okay. You gave us quite a bit right there. 3 years. Are you kidding?
Well, people that are legally parked, exactly, local people, that's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
Now, if I can just get the dirt parking lot turned into
Yeah, paving the main parking lot over there. Has to be on a list somewhere.
No, I mean, I envision 2 subfloors of parking, commercial stuff, a second floor of other stuff, a third floor of housing. More parking or something. Transportation.
Kinda like our old brewery building.
Just gotta get it.
It was a great investment. It's a great investment.
Well, it was City Hall, then it was a library, and then City Hall. It was a jail for a while. Take them downstairs and see what they cut in.
Air and rats and pigeons.
Cut the stuff from.
Well, you know, they keep trying to burn the place down. Did you?
Not as big as the Hall Library.
Broken into the
Hall and library. Hall, oh yes, Hall and library.
and there's
Yeah, even though you're supposed to know where that is. Yeah,
yeah, he turned himself into.
No, I didn't hear him. I didn't hear you.
So they found him.
That's why I asked how long you been there.
Not that long.
All here was all.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. That's the brewery. So it was the administrative section that cut
WSU students.
or got put on.
I used to work, well, you know, I mean, I worked there during the heyday. And, you know, it was amazing. Tour of us. And, well, you know, that was, that downfall was by the county and Columbia, and to a certain extent, even the city of Louisville, because they wanted those water rights, and they were thinking long term with that stuff, because all that happened, because you remember when they just got to claim the water rights in the city of
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the July 9th, 2019 Tenino City Council meeting. Let the record show that all council members are present with the exception of John O'Callahan, who I'd ask that we give an excusal for tonight because he's pretty sick. Didn't I? If you would all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Sage, do you want to start us? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may now all be seated. We have an agenda needing approval, and we've asked that we include TCOM 911 dispatch intergovernmental agreement and excusal of Councilmember O'Callahan. It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as stated. Is there any discussion?
I kind of missed the discussion on that added item. I'm all for talking about it, but my personal feeling is I wouldn't want to take any action tonight. I think it's something I personally need to think about before. Yeah.
Okay. We'll talk about it. Yes. Thank you. So we will be talking about it. We'll be talking about that under old business since it was at the last meeting. I've also got a last minute reminder that we need to move Chief up to presentations. So we can just do that on the fly. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to approval of minutes.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. That brings us to the consent calendar consisting of June 26, 2019 through July 9th, 2019. Payroll EFTs in the amount of $34,422.35. Claims checks 28351 through 28389 in the amount of $111,808.91 for a grand total of $146,231.26. And excusal of Council Member O'Callahan from tonight's meeting. Is there any discussion? Approval. Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion passes. That brings us to presentations. First presentation tonight is Certificate of Advanced Municipal Leadership. Mr. Peter King from the AWC.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Peter King, CEO of AWC, and it's really my pleasure to be here this evening. I appreciate you setting aside some time. You do have a busy agenda, but I'm here to congratulate the mayor on his accomplishment for the Advanced Certificate of Municipal Leadership. And let me first just thank you for your participation and your membership in AWC. I think you all know that we work for you and the other 281 cities and towns in the state. Sometimes it's a big job. There's a lot of variety around the state, but that's what we're about. And if we can do anything to assist you, please feel free to give me a call. We also organize and manage several different pooling programs that the city's involved in. You're involved in our AWC Employee Benefit Trust for your benefits for your employees, involved in our risk management program for loss control management services, liability and property, and also involved in our drug and alcohol consortium. So those are some services that you also take advantage of, and we appreciate your participation there. A little bit of background on the CML program. It was actually started back in 1997, so it's about 20 years old. We did a survey this summer. Many of you probably responded to that, but it's one of the most popular programs, or one of the highly regarded programs, but it's one that a lot of city officials don't really know too much about. So we're making an effort to make sure that city officials statewide know about the program and take advantage of it. It really is a program that is to help you manage and serve as local officials, as mayors and council members. Education is really part of our mission, and that's what the program is about. It requires 30 hours of education through programs that we offer. All of you are automatically enrolled in that program. Whenever you take a session or go to a meeting that it has CML, you're automatically enrolled, and you can go on anytime on our website and see how many credits you've accomplished toward that 30-hour goal. The advanced CML program then was created several years later. It's an additional 30 hours of contact, and then it's also some additional community service activities beyond what the mayor does as mayor in other activities or other community activities, and that's how you get to that advanced CML accomplishment. There's 4 core requirements. As city officials, you all know the basic legal requirements of being a city official: meeting management, resources, human resources, financial management, budgeting, working with staff, networking among your community, regional cooperation. Those are the kinds of things that are covered throughout the curriculum. And it's a choice of taking those things on. So I think with that, I would like to acknowledge the mayor. Over the 20 years, there have been about 1,000 city officials who have accomplished the Certificate of Municipal Leadership. There's only about 300 over the 20 years that have gone to the advance. So the mayor's in good company, and I would encourage all of you to take a look at the program and see if you want to go for that accomplishment. So with that, I've got a certificate I'd like to provide to the mayor. And on behalf of AWC, the board of directors, and our president, wanted to present this certificate of achievement. Thank you. And again, thank you for participating in AWC. And if there's anything that we can do, be happy to help out and work through the mayor and any of you who want to contact us directly.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the police chief with a presentation of his own.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Councilors, Robert Swain, your police chief. Thank you for letting me have first ups tonight for these presentations. One of the things that I really try to do is recognize good work, and sometimes my guys get to do good work beyond just police work, and this is one of those times when I want to recognize them for those efforts. And so I have 2 life-saving awards that I want to present tonight. One to Officer Craig Klumper and the other to Officer John White. And I'll call him up one at a time, but Officer Klumper has participated, that I'm aware of, in at least 3 CPR events where he actually was giving compressions and participating in saving someone's life. Officer White, I was actually there for this call, but he saved a lady from hanging herself in a garage out in back of a house. And because of his quick thinking, he was able to break in a door and get her before she actually stepped off of a, what was that, John?
A bucket.
Bucket, and hung herself, had tied herself a noose and everything. So both of these gentlemen, officers, are the backbone of our police department. Both of them are exceptional in what they do, and I'm very proud to have them receive these awards. So if I could have Officer White and Officer Klumper come up.
Getting there, Craig. I just got a pretty hand going.
I got a new one. So, I got them these life-saving medals with their.
I expect you to wear that on duty.
Excellent.
Turn around there, Chief.
Here.
There you go.
The next presentation is for Mr. John Steins.
Okay, white and blue.
Retired Tumwater Police Chief that has graciously volunteered for us for almost a year now. And he did our policy manual that I showed you the last meeting and did an exceptional job with that. He's also participated in our Reserve Academy and done the mock scenes with us, and we've used his experience to help us along with that. And John's just been an overall resource for the officers as well, for them to go pick his brain, and his experience has just been a blessing for our department. And I really appreciate his friendship and his guidance myself. So to that end, I have an appreciation award for Mr. John Steins, if he'll come up here. This is in recognition for your commitment to the City of Tenino Police Department, for your leadership on the Tenino Police Policy Manual project. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
For letting me do that.
And well, thank you for doing that. I think it's great that you recognize folks that do great things, so thank you.
Thanks.
Next up, we have Key Bank Land Donation, Mr. Ivy Reeves, one and only.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the City Councilman. I'm excited to be here on this evening for this special donation. A few months ago, one of our longtime employees came to us and inquired about a non-traditional donation to the City of Tenino. This donation is typically something that Key Bank has never done. In fact, this could be the first time the bank has done something like this before. The employee that came to us just happened to be the mayor's mother, the sheriff's woman, who's here for this evening. Today, Key Bank is thrilled to donate the parking lot adjacent to the Tenino Timberland Library to the city, which will allow for more access to the downtown corridor. It is our hope that this donation will draw more visitors to Tenino and encourage access to the surrounding businesses as well as the amenities. We're always looking for ways to help the community that we serve, as philanthropy is part of Key Bank's DNA. We applaud the effort of the City of Tenino to have its downtown flourish and are pleased to support it in this way. Thank you to Cheryl for her wonderful idea and being a valued Key Bank employee. And thank you, this community, for making this opportunity possible, and to Tenino for being a thriving community. So on behalf of Key Bank, I am thrilled and excited to be here on this evening. Thank you.
Ivy Reeves. What's your position?
Thank you, Ivy. Thank you, Mom, and Anne Marie, and everybody else at Key Bank. Tenino is truly appreciative of this donation. Next is Young Tenino Trail Feasibility Study. Those are hard acts to follow. You got it.
What are you guys gonna do?
Yeah,
We've got pictures.
Excellent.
Is this in a PDF?
Correct.
Okay. Well, good evening, Mayor and council members and community members. I'm Paul Brewster. I'm a planner with Thurston Regional Planning Council. Driving down here tonight, I'm just reminded, Tenino City Park is really kind of a landmark and a foundation to Tenino. It nearly spans the whole southern limits of the city, and you have the Yelm Tenino Trail, as it's known in Rainier, the Tenino Rainier Trail, that comes into town. And we're here tonight to talk about a study that TRPC in partnership with SCJ Alliance performed, and I have my colleague Whitney Holm from SCJ Alliance here, and we're going to kind of tag team this presentation, so bear with us. But we're here tonight to share with you the findings of a study to expand the trail both south to the town of Bucota and west out to Tenino city limits near the Alpaca Farm, and kind of present some of the highlights of the study and the alignments we looked at, the criteria we used, give you some cost estimates, and then talk about next steps. So you haven't seen the draft plan tonight, so tonight we're just sort of highlighting what some of those findings are, but within that draft plan there's an additional whole wealth of information in the appendices on looking at water resources, cultural and archaeological survey, information about Mazama Pocket Gopher habitat, information that will better position Tenino when the time comes that you're actually ready to design this trail and find some money to do the work. So TRPC awarded Tenino and Bucota a joint grant award for $65,000. It was a Federal Transportation Alternatives Program. TRPC kind of really brought stakeholders together and overall coordinated and managed the project, but it was really SCJ Alliance that did much of the technical analysis and the heavy lifting. And we brought together stakeholders from both Bucota, Tenino, as well as Thurston County and Washington Department of Transportation. So from Bucota, we had interviews and conversations with Mayor Alan Carr. Here in Tenino, both the mayor and John participated as stakeholders. I'm so used to using the cursor button, so I'm going to use this button here. So with the objectives, we really wanted to look at potential alignments for the corridor, develop some recommendations for the trail design, like what would it look like, what you could expect to see. Looking at where we had street crossings, where we would encounter intersections, what would we do to treat traffic safety. Look at, as I mentioned earlier, what sort of environmental constraints would there be in the way in terms of wetlands, flood zones, priority sensitive habitat, and developing planning level cost estimates and kind of identifying next steps. Like, we couldn't do everything with this study, we only had so much funding for the scope of work, so things that we weren't able to fulfill with this study, we identified next steps for the communities to take on as part of the implementation. So we're really looking at two general alignments. So tonight, for most of the slides, just think of you're up high, you're looking south towards Bucota from Tenino, but sort of ground zero is the Tenino Depot Museum. That's where we're starting from. That's where the Yelm Tenino Trail currently ends. So all the alignments we're talking about tonight are really starting from that point, moving south or west. So we're first going to talk about the Bucota alignment. But before that, Whitney's going to kind of give you an overview of the planning process, like the kind of meetings we had, and then talk about the criteria that we use to evaluate trails.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So first we got all the stakeholders, and then we did a workshop, and at the workshop we kind of just looked at all the different alignments and went over what was important. So we decided to come up with some criteria on how we were going to rate each of the alignments, so that way we could make a recommendation. So after the workshop, we all went back and all the stakeholders weighted the criteria that we had come up with. And once all the criteria was weighted, we put all those and put it to the alignments. And for workshop 2, we presented how all the alignments rated from the performance that you guys had all created. And we were just making sure we were all on board and making sure what alignments were feasible and which alignments were not feasible. And from there, we created a preliminary feasibility report and then sent it back out to all the stakeholders to get their input. And that's where we're at right now. We are finalizing that report. So the evaluation criteria that the stakeholders felt were important on rating the alignments were perceived safety, and that includes, would you take your kid on that trail? Does it entice you to be like, okay, I feel comfortable riding on this trail? Trail ambience, is it just getting you from point A to point B, or is it somewhere you actually want to go out and enjoy? Does it have trees surrounding you, or is it just buildings next to you? Water resource conflicts, especially this is important from Tenino to Bucota with a bunch of floodplains. How many raised bridges are we going to need or things like that? So how much conflict are we going to have? Directness of route. Is the alignment go straight to A to B, or is it kind of meander a little bit? Closure due to flooding, and this is again important for the Tenino to Bucota stretch because of the floodplain. Is it okay if that trail is closed when there's a 100-year storm? And we wanted to see how important that was, that this trail was open year-round.
Okay, so just overview of the Tenino to Bucota segment. So right now, if you wanted to travel by foot or on bike to Bucota or from Bucota to Tenino, you're largely relegated to traveling on the shoulder of State Route 507. And even though the speed limit is posted 60 miles an hour, we know people don't travel 60 miles an hour, not to mention that the shoulder is often littered with road debris and rocks. So it's not really the really safest, best, most inviting environment for people wanting to travel on their bike or walking. We also know that there's ditches both not just along between the railroad and State Route 507, but also along the east side of Crowder Road. You have some drainage ditches out there. And of course you have the BNSF Mainline Railroad, which I understand 40 to 60 trains a day moving through is a number I heard once. So steep slopes on the east side of those tracks. As Whitney mentioned, extensive 100-year and 500-year floodplain from the Skookumchuck River complex. Wetlands, we have drainage culverts and creeks. We believe that one of those streams is a fish-bearing stream, so that presents some habitat and some engineering requirements. Private property, although much of the property along one of the segments we're looking at east of the tracks is owned by one property owner, the Jensen family, so that would be something that would need to be negotiated in terms of acquiring that property or negotiating some type of easement, long-term easement. And then Bucota has also expressed concern that they really have limited access into and out of the town, access and egress, so they could either be cut off by a train on 7th Avenue, either entering or exiting from State Route 507, or due to flooding, Tono Road could be shut down. So they would really be limited. So they really wanted us to look at an emergency route where that trail could perform double duty for emergency vehicles or evacuations if necessary. So we did factor that into one of our alignments. Okay, so here we are looking south. Thank you, Google Earth, for your splendid aerial imagery. The first segment we're looking at is what we call GR1, or Geographical Reach 1. This is from Tenino Depot Museum down to 184th Avenue southeast. It's might be kind of hard to see. It's a white line. That's a 2-mile stretch. So if you were to continue on the trail through the park, past the museum, you can see the remnant railroad berm there. You would stay on that till you go to Crowder Road. you would stay on Crowder Road. I think we envisioned the trail being on the same side as the southbound lane, so on the west side of the road. That is because there's fewer driveways to cross, there's fewer ditches, but one challenge could be some utility poles along the way. And I do have a slide that'll show what that design could potentially look like. And then once you get to 184th, we have two options. The first is GR2A, that's a typo on this slide, it should be A. So this would be going through the private property as it is now, along the east side of the tracks. It would be at grade, except for two locations. One where there's a drainage, where we'd have to do some type of structure, preferably a bridge. And the other is that stream I mentioned earlier that might be fish bearing, that would require an additional bridge. So that raises the cost, but being at grade, this trail would flood during flood events. So we would have to accept that there would be some closure. The total cost then for this is about 4.2 million. It's close to about it's close to 2 million. I think it's 1,950,000 for that GR1 segment, and another 2.1 million for that geographical reach 2A.
Are you guys all following? Can you see it? Okay.
It's hard to see.
It's on your computer.
Yeah, it's on here.
Okay. So the other alignment we wanted to throw in there just to look at too was geographical reach 2B. This is so if you were headed south at 184th, you would turn right and then turn left or south on 184th southeast to Bucota. You'd be traveling along the shoulder of State Route 507 for 1.5 miles. That's a lower cost alternative. That is about a $1 million, about $1.1 million construction for that segment, and that would be all within DOT right of way. And so to pursue that option, that would really need to be negotiated with Department of Transportation. It is their preference not to have bicycle and pedestrians on their highway just for safety reasons, and I'll talk about that a little more here in a bit.
10,000 of them this Saturday though.
Yep, FTP is coming through. Take pictures. Send me pictures. I'll be out of town. So this is what that trail segment from Tenino to Bucota would look like along Crowder Road. So we'd probably have about a 5-foot landscape strip, probably grass, be easy to mow, low maintenance, and then a 10-foot wide trail. So you can see that trail is placed between the road and the railroad. That would run all the way down south to Crowder. And then this is what the trail would look like along State Route 507. You would have 2-foot wide Jersey barriers with a 10-foot trail, as well as about probably a 5 to 6 foot shoulder there. So you would have a reasonable buffer. But traffic engineers generally don't like to have Jersey barriers in the road because of the risk of collision. They like to maintain that safety space. But if we were to want to encourage people to be walking and biking along here for their safety, we would need some physical separation. So the advantage of the trail on the east side of the tracks, it would be more scenic. It would be quieter, you'd be surrounded by trees. This is what we're talking about with trail ambience. It would be more direct. If we were to be on this side of the tracks along State Route 507, the road wouldn't be subject to closure due to flooding. It would be open most of the time, but you'd have that traffic noise, cars buzzing by you. Another advantage though is you would really have really good surveillance. So for law enforcement and fire, for emergency medical services, it'd be much easier to access patients from a location here on 507 than say down on the trail. So kind of pros and cons. Okay, now we're going to talk about West Tenino. This is the trail within city limits. Known issues, you have Old Highway 99, the railroad trestle at SR 507 and Old Highway 99 Scatter Creek Bridge, and plenty of Mazama pocket gopher soils out in West Tenino, which all present their challenges. So still the same perspective. This vision for a trail out to West Tenino is memorialized in the city's comprehensive plan, your master parks plan. It was also identified in the Thurston Regional Trails Plan. So this study was really just sort of really trying to find and lock down what those alignments might look like. How do you get from the existing trail out to West Tenino? And of course the logical piece as well is going to run along Old Highway 99. That was sort of the low-hanging fruit. That's the only option you really have. So it really is going to come down to what side of Old 99, the south side or the north side? And there's pros and cons to each. The advantage of it being on the south side is you have the ag park going in, you have some existing residents, so you could provide that direct access to some of those community destinations. Whereas on the north side of the tracks, it's still really undeveloped. And eventually, my understanding is Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife is going to acquire some property out there, which would be nice to have for open access, so having the trail lead to that could be a real advantage as well. But the study kind of leaves it open. That is something that could be determined by the city at a later time when you choose to pursue the project and get into the design phase. So this is a 1.6 mile segment. We're calling it Geographical Reach 4. This segment really is, the limits are the Scatter Creek Bridge out to West Tenino city limits. So the other preferred alignment to connect to that from the park, we're calling it Geographical Reach 3. This is from the Depot Museum.